The Podcasting Morning Show is your morning meetup where podcasting meets purpose and creativity, sparking connection. Hosted by Mark Ronick, with 2 decades of experience and elevated by a team comprised of award-winning podcasters, accomplished entrepreneurs and producers, and podcast hosts with years of experience. Together, they form the backbone of the Podcasting Morning Chat, diving into the nuts and bolts of content creation, sharing real-life challenges, solutions, and success stories. Streaming live every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from Clubhouse, yes, Clubhouse, and available as a podcast just a couple of hours later, the show has evolved into a go-to resource for content creators worldwide. Imagine a mastermind group's collaborative spirit combined with the engaging vibe of a morning drive radio show. That's what we're all about. Learn more at www.podcastingmorningshow.com.
Every great storyteller starts somewhere. Sometimes it begins with a notebook, sometimes behind a camera, and sometimes it begins with a microphone. In today's episode, Gabe sits down with Cindy Mich, an award-winning journalist, media personality, filmmaker, publisher, and founder of the independent film festival Art is Alive, and host of her podcast, Cin's Chat Corner. With a listening audience of more than 200,000 people and a career built across journalism, publishing, film, and podcasting, Cindy shares what it means to evolve as a storyteller in a rapidly changing media landscape. From print journalism to podcasting, this conversation dives deep into authenticity, storytelling that resonates, building platforms that matter, and why human connection will always outlast trends and algorithms. Whether you're an aspiring podcaster, a creator trying to find your voice, or someone passionate about meaningful media, this episode is packed with insight, honesty, and inspiration. Let's dive into this conversation with Cindy.
The purpose and genesis of this show is to help new podcasters or aspiring podcasters who want to jump into the seat and get started with creating their own podcast. So the first question that I usually ask everyone that comes on the show, every host that I've ever had on, I've asked them, you have an idea, it's great, you sit down with your friends or people have told you need to talk about this. Why choose doing a podcast? Why a podcast other than maybe saying just creating YouTube videos or writing a blog or writing a book or along those things? Why talk about it and put it out into a medium like an audio podcast?
Well, for me personally, honestly, I started as a fluke, actually. I had no idea that I was going to get involved in podcasting. Someone came to me and said, hey, we've been following your work, meaning print, because I've been a writer for a significant number of years and a journalist. And so they liked my work and they said, you know what? You have a great voice. You'd be good for a podcast. And I was like, no, there's no way anybody's going to want to listen to me. Well, I found out very quickly that I was wrong on that one. I always say to folks, the biggest reason to start a podcast versus doing something in print per se is 3 ways to look at this. First off, it's incredibly comfortable. I'm not going to lie, folks. I'm 56 years old. Would I love to sit on camera all dolled up like I am right now and do an interview? Yes, and I do that regularly. But when you are on radio or podcasting, 90% of the time, if it's not visual, you're in your pajamas. So what better gig is there is to get paid to sit in pajamas and sit and talk to people and do a podcast? That's number one. So comfort and also ease, meaning that anybody that has a laptop and decent enough equipment can start a podcast, right? So there's that component to it. From my experience, what I have found is I am noticing more people listening to podcasts now than they ever did before, which is also another good reason to get into this because you're on a popular medium right now. You don't have to have as much experience. Let's say somebody like myself who's a journalist, you need years of experience if the Times or somebody in newspapers are going to hire you, right? So if you lack experience, if you have a lot to say, if you are open to opinions, love to ask questions, and most importantly, make an impact. There are tons of people that I know in the podcasting world that do shows, and people will come and listen in and they'll say, something I heard or something I learned made a difference in my life. So the biggest thing for me is always saying to folks, if you want to make a difference, if you want to do something creative and out of the box, that's also inexpensive, podcasting is a great outlet for you.
Ooh, I love that, because there is a lot of resistance, like you said, when jumping into other types of mediums. And this one is one that you can pretty much, if you have an idea, you have the drive or the passion to learn a little bit, you can really dive in and find yourself an audience and find yourself a niche that you could actually grow in. And eventually, at some point, for a lot of podcasters, the idea is to monetize.
Yep.
So to get to that point, right, is starting out, but you got to start, right?
You got to actually get going on it.
You do.
Mhm.
So I love this. When I was doing a lot of the research, and I try to do as much research as I can.
Mhm.
So you said that every interviewee is a celebrity. I love that.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a philosophy. That's just not, that's a great way to look at it. So how, let's just say, how's holding that position changed the way you've been able to pull out, you know, authentic, really genuine conversation? And, for doing it for a podcast, how much does how much have you actually seen that, using this formula, pull out a lot of really raw conversations that, say, other formats wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't translate as well?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I stand by that philosophy. So typically, when you have any guest that comes on, aka a celebrity, what I classify any celebrity as is any person that entertains, educates, inspires, or informs someone. So 99% of my guests typically do that, almost all of them. So one of the main reasons for putting them on a podcast and getting out good material is most people do not want to be on a camera. I have come to find that out. Not everyone becomes as comfortable as I am in sitting and having a conversation like this. So, first off, it allows people to be vulnerable. It also allows them to feel comfortable. And most importantly, they can make mistakes. Meaning, let's say, for instance, if I am doing something live on camera, there is no editing in that moment. It literally is live. There's no way to change it or tweak it, etc. And it's it. It's out there, and that's the way it is. Also, with print journalism, there are certain liberties that one can take sometimes because clearly, at a certain point, I can only cut so much, and that it is the way it is. So I think people can be more of their authentic selves when they're on a podcast because they're not seen, they're not judged as much. And moreover, I think a lot of times the questions that I have phrased to them are purposely made in such a way to where I will get information out of them that will educate my audience or entertain them or want them to stay tuned. One of the biggest issues I find with podcasters is I'll watch a modern podcast or people will have me evaluate it. And at a certain point, I'm like, it's good, but you're losing people. I feel like at some given point in time, we're going somewhere. That's why it's so important to pick the right people. Like I said, celebrities for one, people that will get you educated and entertaining. Third of all, most of the people that come on my podcast have had a bit of experience. I don't require a ton. Like I do require that on the other mediums. But when it comes to podcasting, you do not need to do 50 different podcasts to be able to come on here. It's a medium that allows you to be able to kind of cut your teeth on it, if you will. Meaning like, let's get on a podcast. Let's try this out. We don't need extensive media training, to do things like that. So I think by maintaining that philosophy, keeping it on a podcast that's consistent where my audience always knows I will be thoroughly researched, I will have some form of celebrity, and I will also have individuals on that I know will keep the interest of my audience. Those are key components right there. And I think the formula has worked pretty well for the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And seeing that you have a background in doing this, in doing radio, doing television,
Mm-hmm.
the transition for a lot of people, it's like, well, it's a little bit easier for me because I do have the background or I do have the experience. But something that you touched on that made sense is that for a lot of people, hopping on a podcast, like hopping on a podcast and having a conversation is a very easy way to kind of say, wade your toes in the water, get them warm and just see whether or not, this would be something you could probably put yourself doing or see yourself doing, as an everyday or an every week or however often you want to create your show, but putting
Yeah.
yourself out there to be able to do this.
Yeah. Absolutely. You betcha. And I also notice one of the things I hear a lot of times when I get done with the podcast is literally, I was nervous about this. And this is just two people having a simple conversation. And I'm like, basically, that is what it is. I try to make that for television too. You always want your guests to be comfortable. You want them to feel like this is an easy transition from, oh my gosh, one question to another. What's she going to ask me next? How is this going to go? So I try to ease them into this and I try to make them feel like they are sitting in my house with me and we are having a conversation that matters.
Yes. Part of wanting to do this is I wanted to get podcasters who are afraid to make that jump because they fear the idea of And I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could sit down
Yeah.
and talk or interview somebody. I'm like, well, have you ever sat down with a friend and just had a heart to heart conversation? Have you ever just had a point where you could just ask questions of a teacher or a counselor or somebody?
Hmm.
You can look at it in the same terms. Like if you can do that, you can find yourself the ability to have and sit down and create a podcast and have a conversation with, somebody you've never met before, but yet you're interested in what information they have to share. And you have to look at it from the point of saying, I want to extract something out of this conversation because I too want to learn something from having a talk with someone like you, Cindy, because with your background in doing this, there's so many things that people don't even know or experience in doing, say, something like doing radio or doing media because they don't see the behind the scenes. They just see the finished product, the
Yep.
finished product. And there's so many more steps that go into that. So that's kind of what I'm doing with this podcasting thing is to pull back the curtain a little bit and say, okay, look, here's what's really involved. Here's what you can do. Here's the difficult parts. This is probably where we're going to find a little bit of a little bit difficult, but you can go past it. People who start doing these shows, some of these people who've gained monetization, a lot of their stories, a lot of the hosts that I've had on who've created, 1,200, 1,300 episodes, they didn't have a background in doing podcasting.
Right.
It was a passion that turned into something that they really found a niche in creatively and said, I love doing this. I can do this over and over and over again.
You bet. Yeah.
So I love when you have people on, when you bring people on with celebrities or just even having a normal conversation, you treat very much most of them the same. You have a very even keel, and I really like that about you.
Thank you.
So seeing that you've had, over 200,000 radio listeners, millions of TV subscribers, you didn't start from silence, but most people listening to this show, they're starting from ground zero. What's one honest thing that you would tell someone building an audience from zero with no numbers that you can't teach them that you can share through your lived experience?
Well, there would probably be a couple, not just one. I would say probably one of the most fundamental things that people need to remember, and it's the one thing I hear over and over again. If you listen to any of my shows, what people say to me is, I've never heard those questions get asked to me before. That's a unique and interesting perspective. I bring something to the table that other people do not. And that is fundamental in 2026 when there are so many podcasters doing this. If you really want to build an audience, three things have to happen. First off, again, you have to set yourself apart from any other podcaster. You cannot do the exact same thing as someone else, and you can't do it in the means and the way that they do it. That's one. Number two, it is a business. And yes, I believe all of my endeavors are artistic and I treat it as an art and I can't live without my art. But I also spent 10 years building that art as a business. And most people that get into podcasting, and that's fine. If you do not want to make money and you just want to be heard, nothing wrong with that. And go at it. That's a hobbyist. But most of us actually do this as part of our profession, which means you need to look at it as a business. You build a following, you do interviews, you get reviews of your product, and you get your name out there. That means when they Google you, they know who you are. That's two. And third of all, under no circumstance should you ever continue or start a podcast if it ever becomes a chore. I say this to people all the time. Oh, I got to keep doing this. No, you don't. There isn't a person alive who's saying to you, you better get on there and do that podcast. That's a hard no. You know what? If you're not digging it, if it's not fun anymore, don't do it. If you get annoyed, if you're sick of gas, if it's too tedious, stop doing it. It's that simple.
Right.
You know?
No, you're spot on, and that's one of the touch points for a lot of podcasters who come on here with the idea of saying, I do want to monetize, I want to do business, but they pick a niche or a subject or something or a topic that you got to remember, you got to be able to do this over and over and over. It's a long game. It's a marathon.
Yes.
So you have to be able to talk about this ad nauseum at times because there's going to be points where you feel like, I don't want to do this because life is showing up, whatever the excuse that comes into, whatever the circumstances, whatever the situation is. But you still, if you're really passionate about it, and that's the work through that most of the podcasters I've had on have told me is that I was lucky that I was talking about something that I knew that I could talk about, even at my weakest points. that it wouldn't drive me crazy, because I've had other podcasters who've talked to me on the side. They didn't want to be interviewed, but they talked to me on the side and they were like, don't, I started my first podcast talking about a subject that I really wasn't very knowledgeable or really cared about, but I saw that there was a money grab in trying to do
Mm,
it, and I got burned out. So that was one of the examples when I talk to new podcasters, is like, make sure it's something that you really want to talk about, and it's something that you share, that you're joyous and passionate about. Like you said, at some point won't become a chore. Even in doing all the behind the scenes stuff, the fun part is what you're getting to do, the talk, the interview, the conversation, having, when that becomes the chore, it's over.
you're done.
You're done. It's
Yep.
probably time to walk away at that point.
Agreed.
So have you ever found yourself in one of those situations where you're like, man, and I'm just bringing this up because of what we were talking about before the show, but have you ever
Yes.
found yourself in a situation where you're just like, ooh, why do I keep doing this sometimes? I love it. I love it. But why do I keep putting so much on my plate with this?
Yes, I feel like there are plenty of times, like public access TV. Now that I have done this for a while, what I am finding is that sometimes I'm not as excited. But I never really wanted to be on camera regularly all the time. That was more of a wish of the love of my life was an actor, and so he thought I would be terrific in front of the camera, etc. And I still get nervous, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? From a cosmetics perspective, for one, I'm 56 now, and I'm like, okay, now you have to worry about how you look, the way you present yourself. Unfortunately, with real journalism, people get very caught up in presentation, and they forget that all they have to hear is what comes out of here, which they don't pay attention to sometimes. So yeah, so there are moments where I have not wanted to do TV. When he passed, I stopped doing everything for a year and a half. When I deal with when I get pitches from publicists, I expect individuals to be media trained to some extent, and so sometimes interviews are just it's challenging. Like you get an interview where they just are nonstop talking. There's no air. They're not coming up for air. They're just going to go, go, go. That's tough. Or even worse, when people actually don't appreciate what you do. That's the number one reason I want to quit sometimes is I feel sometimes fellow colleagues, sometimes people that come on the show, they don't appreciate your efforts. I don't think media as a whole is really embraced as much as they should be, whether it's business owners or individuals in the media. I think that people just assume, well, if I have a business, I don't need the media. Wrong. Everyone needs the media for something. We are the hub of getting your message out to everyone. And so for me personally, I feel like that's really the only time when I get fed up and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. People just don't appreciate what I do or they don't take it seriously. And then I just want to say, all right, fine. Go find someone else to do it. That's fine. So yes, I've wanted to quit like every couple of months, but I mean, let's see, it's 10 years for radio. And then I've had 2 magazines and I've done TV for the last 2 years. And it's been like, I guess I'm not quitting, but there are days when there are pencils thrown in this house and I just have a good scream and I'm like, why am I doing this? Because I love interviewing people. I love talking to people and getting to know them and getting those jewels out. You know what I mean?
Yes, because there's sometimes, look, this is just my I statement here, but there are times where I might not be in the throes of the best part of my life, but sometimes having a conversation with somebody and seeing the world from their perspective really, really grounds you and opens your eyes to, like, saying, my situation is bad, but it could be worse. Let me just be okay with what life is throwing at me right now and
That's
to
right.
move forward with it, because that's probably one of the offshoots that I've figured out by doing this, by having these conversations, that I wouldn't realize would happen to me, because again, not having a background in it, I never knew that having these conversations, there would be points where, like, again, I would find a moment where there was clarity in my life because of somebody else's life story,
Oh,
because of
yeah.
somebody else's journey, somebody else's
Yeah.
life experiences. So how was, you said you took time off. I don't know how comfortable you are talking about with the passing of your partner,
Sure. I
but
mean,
how much of a shift was that for you, having something like that, and then trying to continue forward and grind through, doing the publication that you were doing, that had to be pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the most difficult part, and I think this holds true for anyone, and depending on the person who passes away. In this case, one of the biggest challenges I had is, well, why should I do it? He's not here. He's not. I mean, he was probably one of my most biggest fans, and he was my advocate, and he was the one pushing me to go to these places that I didn't think I could go. So I asked myself, well, we ran the magazine together, so of course I knew that without him, I did not want to continue it, so I created a new magazine, and so it took a long time for me to just want to write. I don't think people understand that most of the time when I do a podcast, I will write out a script, just like I do with the magazine, etc. When your words are gone, it's very hard to find them because, sometimes it's not just this. I think people don't realize it's this too. So when your heart is broken, you don't care. You feel like you have nothing to say. It took me a very long time to do any interviews about him or speak about him because it's such a traumatic experience, of course. But I think one of the biggest things is I have a really great support system. Some of my followers or people that first listen to me or read my work have been such good friends, like have become personal friends, and they would follow me 100 yards, and they kept saying to me, people want to hear what you have to say, or you have words. And when I cover, let's say, certain events, I will ask people, I'm not sure I'm still good anymore. I mean, do you think I should still do this? Now, I've yet to hear anyone tell me, nope, you're not the same anymore. I thought when you were the best version of yourself and then that part of you leaves, it's like, what if I'm not good at this anymore? So I think the biggest apprehension I had was, can I do this as well? Because I really was at a really good place at the point when he got sick. And then, of course, when he passed, I thought,
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I'd like to believe that I am wrong because people tell me that I'm wrong. I want to believe that he can see this. So every time I do something that he can still see it, I want to also touch lives. It's very important to me that whatever I do for the rest of my life, brokenhearted or not, because grief stays with you forever.
Absolutely.
But I want to be able to say one day, you know, I know that you two are sitting at home and you're a widow and you're feeling awful and it hurts and you can't breathe, but there are still things you need to do for you. And that's what I'm learning now is he would have never wanted me to spend 4 years not really doing everything that I want to do. I'm really disregarding his feelings by doing this. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. And then I was able to get up and say, all right, we're going to give it a shot. Do I think I'm doing pretty well at it? I guess so. I mean, I'm probably
Mhm.
too hard on myself, but I think for any person that watches this today, if you are stuck in a situation or feel like you want to give up, I'm the number one person to say, you take all the time you need to breathe, but when you're done getting your breath back, now it's time to really look at, okay, how can we make this what we want it to be? You know what I mean? Don't let that just break everything for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because there's power in what you just shared for anyone listening. Because here are people that I've had conversations with who say, I have a really deep personal story of loss and something like that. And I want to share what got me through it. And I say, well, why not chronicle that in terms of, say, creating a podcast or putting it out there? Because there's somebody else somewhere who's going through the same struggles. They don't know exactly where they don't know where to find exactly what's going to pull them through. And
Right.
it's sometimes hearing someone else's story similar to yours or somebody else's that resonates and it gets them through that point and it lets them continue on through life and let them find the tunnel on the other side, the light on the other side of the tunnel there, because it's hard walking through darkness alone and just having somebody, even a voice coming through your headphones
Yeah.
that can really enlighten and again, give you hope. And sometimes that's what I say, speaking and saying and sharing and doing what we're doing here, creating a podcast. And people always say, I don't know what I would talk about. Well, if your experience is grief or if your experience is this, there's power in sharing that story and finding others to bring them together. You're building community simply by having that conversation and putting it out in the world.
Yeah.
But you never know if you don't open your mouth. You don't know what you say. Like you said, if you don't wait till you catch your breath, give life a moment, and then figure out what the next step and how to move forward is because it's tough. So
Yes, it is.
thank you for sharing that, though. I love that you were able to share that because it shows anyone listening. And the reason why I wanted to ask anyone listening, you hear those kind of circumstances you still find the ability to work through them. So if you're creating a podcast, you run through something along those lines, it's okay to hit the pause button. But if it's something that you love and you want to go back to doing it, guess what? It's still here. The medium's here. People will still come back and find a listen. So let me ask you, when you say you write your scripts for both your podcast and say for your publication, how do you approach writing a script for, say, a podcast as you would opposed to writing it for a publication? Because there are people who don't like using AI. There are people who want to write out their own thoughts.
Yes.
So when they get started, they're like, hey, I can write a lot. I can do a lot of these things. How do I build this out to format as, say, an outline or a summary that I could talk about in creating my own podcast episode?
You bet. Well, in my case, of course, as I mentioned, because I have a journalistic background, I'm very, very detailed. So typically what happens is it's usually more in an outline form, where I'll put down, and it does look like a script. Obviously, there's no answer there because I can't fill that in, but it's like a Q&A that goes all the way down there. And I do this specifically for a reason, because I'm human, which means because I balance multiple things in my career, I get tired or I forget about things. Oh, and I had cataract surgery. So guess what? I can see far away, but I can't see close. So guess what's got to happen? When grandma can't see properly, she's got to have her notes, right? So I'm like, okay, so that's another good reason why we do the script. But most importantly, I think the big difference between, let's say, if I do a script for public TV where I'm on live on camera, it's even more crucial for me. And in that case, I usually will use cue cards because you're live on camera and we don't have the luxury of having all that, right? So I think the neat part about having a script in place is, number one, most of your research is accessible to you. Number two, you never know on a podcast, the well could run dry. I could just sit here now and be like, and you know how fun that is, folks, when someone's like this? And there's quiet. There's dead quiet. That's like not good. Okay, just so you know, folks. So never on a podcast do we want quiet.
Well, I was letting it be quiet. They'll learn.
Yes. So I'm like, you need like what I call ad libs. I'm like, worst case scenario, if I ask all these solid questions and they still run out of answers and we've only been in 15 minutes, what do we do? Then there's those little attaboys there where it's like, okay, let's go to those. So it's super important to maintain, if you don't want to do a script, even just a small outline, cue cards, little notes for yourself, even like Post-it notes. I've seen some people do that where they're like, okay, now I can remember this subject. There is nothing worse on a podcast than not only dead air, but really two people that can't communicate well with each other because one is either not researched enough or the other one is just not interested enough. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be interest, there has to be knowledge, there has to be research done. And moreover, and most importantly, don't forget, folks, not only does the script go hand in hand, but part of preparing with the script is check the audio, check your background, make sure everything is looking okay, sounding okay, because without that, again, poor presentation, people are gone. That's it.
Right.
I learned that the hard way. So yeah, hopefully it answers the question. But I mean, when it comes to podcasting now, not so much anymore because I've been doing it for a long time, but you can bet that I always have some kind of notes around because we're not perfect and we forget stuff, and you're busy and you're tired. And I'm like, wait, there's all this,
Yeah, that's what looks. So I
Yep.
always try. So this is again. Again, having a background in doing this, I'm very much like you. I try to over prepare and not undersell when it comes to having a conversation.
Yes.
Because I have found myself in a situation where it is like pulling teeth with somebody on the other end, and if there are a lot of one-worded answers or very quick, short answers, and you're blowing through all your questions or whatever, it's difficult to find yourself and going, man, I scheduled an hour-long conversation and I'm done with it.
And you're like, great.
Where do we go from here?
Fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's good to have a good amount of research, at least by your side. I've been trying to train most of the new podcasters when they sit down to have multiple things, even if you don't totally use everything. Sometimes you can get into a great conversation with someone and not even touch a lot of the questions. You start having a conversation with somebody and it just flows for whatever reason. There's a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you don't realize I've been talking for an hour with this person and I haven't even hit on a lot of the points that I just recently did this with somebody. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't plan for 2 hours, but we talked for 2 hours in one of these interviews. And I was like, man, I have 2 hours worth of stuff I can use now, but
I know.
it wasn't the intention. But in doing an interview and sitting down and talking with somebody and having the ability to not only have, say, research at hand in case you need it, but then also to actively listen to the conversation and go, "Oh, there was a touch point there that I didn't realize that my guest shared. Let me dig deeper into that because that I think that would interest my audience." So I think as far as when you're creating and putting together a show format and when you're creating and building a show, your show outline, your template, or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it
Mhm.
their run of show.
Yeah.
How, however you put it together, it's good to have that in front of you and readily available because, for whatever reason, again, let's just say your audience, your guest, I've had this happen. I don't know if you've ever had this happen. Your guest just drops off, bad connection,
Yeah.
or, and you're like, what do I do now? What do,
Punt.
uh, yeah, exactly. And I've had to do these on not just recorded, but I used to do live streams as well. So it's even tougher on a live video stream when your guest drops off and all of a sudden it is just you and whoever's watching. Can you be entertaining enough to sit there and talk about or have something to share that'll keep your audience engaged in case your guest does come back? Or even
Yep.
like you said, if you got a punt and say, hey, listen, look, we're going to change the subject here. We're going to talk about this, roll with this idea. So let me ask you, as far as, doing podcasting and doing media, how long do you see yourself like doing this as far as a career? Like, is it 10 years? Are you looking to say, hey, because there's some point we all say, look, it's time for us to step away. I always
Yeah.
say, like an athlete has to eventually come to a point and say, it's time for me to hang it up. And then they jump into media, of course.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, you can always end one and, like, obviously for podcasting, I mean, now I do podcasting selectively. So when I feel like doing it, I do it. And I only say that because of the fact that my publication is a magazine. So because I'm managing editor, I've been writing about 80% of the content. So it can be very, in time inclusive for me personally to be putting the whole magazine together. So that takes up a bunch of my time, or covering live events. I'm also a film judge. So a lot of times I'll be judging films or covering them, etc. So with that being said, podcasting is on occasion when I feel like it, which could be sometimes a couple times a month. It used to be 3 times a week sometimes. So it's very far removed from that. Well, yeah, just because the demand was so high. But once I started navigating, podcasting led eventually to more newspapers and print, and then the magazine started. And then of course public access has only been around, I say, less than 2 years I've been doing it.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time now is really spent between the magazine and TV. So for me, I've also done, hundreds and hundreds of episodes are on Blog Talk Radio that I had done. So I'm like, I had a ton of time when it comes to doing the podcast. So for me personally, do I wish that I could go back to it sometimes? Yes, because it is so much easier for me. And I, of course, didn't do what you're doing. When I do radio, it was Blog Talk Radio, so you didn't see us. So of
You didn't
course I
see that.
want to do that because I'm not wearing anything but like shorts and a tank top, you know. But nowadays, the call is more for the other side. My followers would say to you, yeah, we'd love to have her go back. You know what I mean? I'm sure that they would love to have me do it full time. It's just hard, I mean, my love is really the written word. So any time that I get to do writing, I'm happy. So is podcast writing? Kind of. You know what I mean? But like the magazine is really where it's at, the scripts and things like that. But, I'm always evolving. And as I age, I'm starting to find out maybe I want to do this more. Maybe I want to do this. So I would ask me that in like a year. Like, where are you going to be at then? Or I might be, like, hey, the ultimate is, I have said before I was going to try to get on mainstream media because that's as high up as you go. Like, I've done everything else to what's left, like ABC, NBC. But let's get real. If I go to ABC, unless I get a daytime talk show, we'll be talking for what, 4 minutes? And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, you're done. Because that's what you get is 4 or 5 minutes. Cindy is not a 5-minute journalist. So
No.
I could shop around for a talk show. I know that much, but that's not happened yet. So we'll see.
Yeah. And who knows? Who knows? Again, the stars might work out and
Yes.
podcasting might become part of what that is. I mean, there's celebrities who do podcasts now all the time. I mean,
Oh, it's
the-
crazy.
They're literally like Netflix itself is actually now creating like documentaries or shows, and then they've got a companion podcast piece that goes along with it. And then, you have people, of course, like again, celebrities creating their own
Sure.
podcasts. Like Rainn Wilson has one of his own.
I know.
There's so many of them now that are jumping in and doing this because they understand that, like, kind of like what you just said. Do I want to do the 4 or 5 minute, segment that people see me on and that's great and they know who I am? Or do I
Or
really get the in-depth stuff where, the one that everybody goes and talks to because he was a celebrity when he started was Joe Rogan, and how
yeah,
and
Joe.
how he turned that into, a big pay.
He sure did. Everybody knows him now.
Everybody knows him now, but before he was of course a stand-up comedian. He was doing acting, news radio on the show. He was doing a lot of things like that, and then he's like, you know what? Let me get behind the podcast.
I know.
And who knows? It might work out for Cindy. They're like, you know what? We really do like you behind a microphone. Let's see where this goes.
You never know. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like if somebody offered me like, let's go to like Sirius Radio or
Yeah.
one of those places, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would never say never. I just know that each year as I get older, I'm like reprioritizing. Like I'm getting a little older, need some time for stuff. What's going to work for me? So never say never.
Exactly. And for anybody who's listening, again, you got to at least start. So
Yes.
what would you tell anyone who's sitting here? They're saying to themselves, man, I have a really great show concept. Like they've shared it with a few other people and they go, that
Yeah.
would be great to listen to. But then they might even have the equipment ready. They might say, I got the equipment here now, but yet they haven't found themselves sitting down, recording. What advice would you give to somebody who's saying, I have an idea. I might even have the equipment to sit down and get started with it, but where do I start? How do I get this moving? What would you say would be the first thing to remove out of again, the path of resistance to get yourself on the air, get yourself out there so people are actually listening to that idea? It becomes something that's, again, a product at that point.
Well, you bet. Yeah. I think it takes I think my top 4, there's always a top 4 to everything with me, 3 or 4. First of all, you have to keep this mindset. Never too old, never too underexperienced, never giving up, never taking criticism too seriously. Now, yes, even I, as a professional who's done this for a long time, I accept criticism. I don't like it, but at the end of the day, I'm not perfect and neither are you. You're not too young or too old to do this. It doesn't take an incredible amount of time to do this unless you choose to. You do not need state of the art $6,000 equipment to do this either. So you need to keep in mind that budget is not necessarily an issue either. So those are a couple of mantras I subscribe by. Number 2, again, it goes back to what I said before. If you think your idea is original enough, if you think you haven't heard it before, and you think that you have the ability to make a positive influence or be a positive influence, I should say, on other people, that's super important. Again, a lot of us do podcasters for all sorts of different reasons, but I'm always on the side of you either have to be influential, educational, or engaging. Otherwise, again, people are going to tune out. Number 3, you need to remember that if you truly want to be invested in this, make the time for it. Not a sizable amount of time, but it has to be on your to-do list this week. You can't say, I want to do a podcast. It's like saying, I want to write a book, but I'm going to wait 9 months. Well, what are you waiting for? You know what? What are you waiting for? This is kind of your wake-up call right now. Like, hello. And the 4th thing is, again, do your homework. I say this all the time to people. I talked about this earlier in our interview. Not only do you need to know the business end of it, get out there and do interviews and get your face and your name out there and build your social media following. Understand your market and your audience. What that means is everybody has a great idea, right? But if you only got 4 people and they're all females and they're only aged this to this, that's great, but that's only 4. So remember, you can start out small, but in order for you to get to that golden gate, so to speak, always got to be studying, always got to be paying attention. Who's listening to me? Who's not listening to me? What do I need to do to get them to listen to me, sort of thing? So just keep in mind that even though all of this is relatively simple to start, once we start getting in the throes of it, it's going to take a little bit of work. It's going to take a little bit of homework, and it's going to take a little bit of diligence and patience and persistence. But I truly believe if you believe in yourself and the concept, and you have time, and you are patient, You can do this.
I love that. You hit on something that I haven't really dug deep in, but it's it's the networking aspect of what it is to get into any kind of media field.
Absolutely.
That sometimes it's who you know at some point.
Yeah.
It gets you into the door, and it's simply done by having the right conversation or networking and saying, "Hey, I'm starting a podcast." It's literally how I got all the people that I've interviewed on there was
Absolutely.
networking and just saying, "Hey, listen, I'm starting a podcast about podcasting, and I need somebody. Can I speak to anybody who's got experience in podcasting?" And then all of a sudden, the floodgates opened, and there were so many people, and I was like, "Okay, this is the blessing. Let me let this pass through. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted." But it was the networking aspect that opened the door. But if you said if it's only the four people that you have around, if that's all you're going to have, so it is having the networking thing. And then the other thing that you really touched on was the feedback and the critique. For a lot of podcasters, it's it's a new thing. So it's not nothing that needs to be thinking that somebody's being overcritical or judgmental of you. The reason somebody wants to give you feedback is because they want to see you get better. And hopefully you're open minded to it to say, yeah, I want to get better. Like that's
Yes.
how I've done better. I've had people tell me off site and offline, hey, you could probably improve in doing this. Wait a minute, before you say anything else, can I write this down?
Yeah.
Because for me, again, I'm a student of learning. I want to get better at it. Why not hear it from other people who've had the experience and the people, again, the podcasters who've been here and doing it 18
Yeah.
years?
Absolutely.
Learn from them. And if they're sharing knowledge to me for free, man, it's better than anything I could have probably paid for.
Absolutely.
So having the ability to say feedback, and like you said, sometimes people just I don't know, rubs them the wrong way. Maybe it's the
Mm.
approach it's
Yeah.
presented, but I do love having feedback from people because the way I see it, it only helps me improve as an interviewer, as a host, as a communicator, and those three qualities are important if I'm going to be doing this.
Well, yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that. And this is the fun part. I get to ask most of my hosts. So what's going on for Cindy the next couple of weeks, months? What are you talking about? Tell us a little bit about the publication. This is where you get to promote yourself. This is the fun part of, for me, getting to listen and to see all the exciting things happening in Cindy's world, because
Let's see.
more people to discover you, not just the people that
Thank
already know
you.
you. I don't want the 200,000 people that are, I want 400,000 for you. Okay.
Well, let's see. What is going on in Cindy's world? So for right now, I know that I'm just about to put out the next issue of the magazine that's coming out. So the magazine is called Elegant Expressions Magazine, and I cover pretty much everything, really. I mean, it started off as being more arts and entertainment, which I've covered for a long time, but now it's expanded out. We do things in addition to that, like health and fitness. I've got events in there. I've got all sorts of written work, original pieces of artwork that are in there. I have a product guide now. We also go into things like things for the family, and you name it, I've got it. Bottom line, managing editor likes it, it's interested in it, she's covering it. It's that simple. So typically the only celebrity thing, because some people call, celebrities, those people from television.
Yeah.
In times past, I have been very meticulous about saying I will interview celebrities, and I have, but typically there's a place for them. And normally it's only on the front cover. That's pretty much it. So I have had celebrities on my cover or recognizable people, but by and large, I really want to keep this, something to where small business owners, media, PR, tons of people in this magazine don't usually get seen. Celebrities really don't need me. You know what I'm saying? And I get
Yeah.
that. I'm like, they really don't need me. So I'm like, I'm fine with that. So the next issue of the magazine is coming out very shortly, actually this week. And then, of course, we start all over again. I try to make it a monthly magazine. As far as my public access TV, after a hiatus, I'm finally going back to it. My family has needed my attention. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. So the name of the show is called Cin's Chat Corner. It is on public access channels in 17 different states. Typically, when people want to watch it, I say either you can go to my YouTube, because public access doesn't work like regular TV, meaning that some will publish a week from now, some will do it 2 times a month, and you never know. It would be almost impossible to track it down there. So I try to keep episodes in one place. So we have those episodes coming on. I will be in New York City covering Tribeca this year once again for the 4th
Ooh.
year. Super excited. I was a judge this year for the World Fest in Houston. So I'm currently considering attending that this weekend. I'm also a judge for Nashville Film Festival, so I will be in Nashville in September, covering and attending that. I have a screenplay but I haven't decided if I'm going to finish or not. So I'm not saying too much about that yet until we know whether we're doing that or not. My students just told me I should write a book about, I just taught 4 lectures in New York at Hofstra University this weekend on how to write a strong play, how to get published, meaning your book get published, how to get your
Yeah.
film, like how film distributed. And also we discussed just creative writing. And all 4 of those, all of my students were like, you need to put this in a book so that all the rest of us can learn it, because you'd be surprised how many students go to school, even to an art school of any kind, but they're not being taught the business end. And so I am meticulous about teaching workshops all the time to students, future whomever, to let them know about
Yes.
that. So that might be something that goes on, obviously. And then, of course, I'm shooting a short film this year.
Yes.
It's called Saving Fancy Face, and that is the story of Michael and I. And I'm doing that just so if any widow or any other person out there who has buried their loved ones, you should hear this loud and clear. One of the things that I cannot forgive myself for, and unfortunately death robs you of, is they don't really get to answer you when you ask them questions. And for 4 years, I have felt responsible for the death of my partner. So what does a typical artist do? Turning it into a film. So you're going to see us fall in love. You're going to see him get sick. You're going to see the ways that I believe that I saved him. And so it's kind of a self-healing kind of film. So that's happening this year. That's a lot. That's enough. There you go.
Hey, but hey, I like the idea of writing down the book. First of all, I like the book idea. I mean, because there's so many ways that those kind of books really do help out, especially a lot of writers, screenwriters, creative writers. I mean,
absolutely.
When I first started doing and getting into any kind of media, that was the one thing that I loved was screenwriting. So I read Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. I read Robert McKee's Story.
Okay.
Sid Field's. I mean, I really went into wanting to learn how to screenwrite. So those books were like Bible for me for a long time. So if you have that kind of knowledge, I would say just write it down. I agree with your students. I'm going to be like your students. You need to write a book. And then
let me find time. Okay, I need time. That's the problem here. Breathing room. Remember, there is none.
Or hey, you find an assistant. Somebody said, "Hey, you want to be an intern? Right, start writing."
Working on it. That is on the list. I'm like totally working on it, just because I'm like I just can't do everything.
And I love the movie too. The idea of the movie, the short film, because there's a lot that gets, again, storytelling is always beautiful, whatever medium that you fall in love with. And mine is film. So anytime that I get to see somebody share their story, that to me, that's the best that you could probably hope for.
Yes.
And, please tell me too, when it comes out, whenever you do put it out, I would love to talk about it and share it, because again, I'm a creative at heart. That's how I got started into doing all of this as well.
Okay.
Was that, just seeing the creative aspect and the spark that somebody has, and then trying to find the right medium that works for them, whether it's writing, video, movie, film, radio, all of it. You've done all of them. So
yeah, I know.
It's crazy that you have, but you do have a lot on your plate. But thank you for taking the time, Cindy, to sit down, have this conversation with me. I'll be publishing this episode probably in about 3 weeks from now, because I have such an early. I mean, I have such
fine. Yeah, I get it.
Episodes I'm trying to push out right now, and I'm doing 2 a week. Trust me, I'm doing 2 a week and trying to get them out as quickly as possible. But
do what you got to do. I'm not that worried. You know what I mean? Like, get it cleaned up. Whenever it gets done, it gets done. Like I said, not a huge rush.
Okay. Thank you again, Cindy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I do appreciate it. We will be back with another episode next week. So until then, thanks again. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
And that wraps up another episode. A huge thank you to Cindy Mich for sharing her incredible journey through journalism, filmmaking, publishing, and podcasting, along with the lessons she's learned from building authentic media that truly connects with people. To learn more about Cindy, her upcoming film festival later this year, head over to filmfreeway.com/artistalivefilmfestival. Check out her podcast at iheart.com/podcast/CinsChatCorner. Be sure to follow Cindy Mich on Instagram at @official Cindy Mich. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow and subscribe to Podcast About Podcasting, wherever you listen to podcasts. If today's conversation gave you insight, motivation, or helped you think differently about your own creative journey, share this episode with a fellow podcaster, storyteller, filmmaker, journalist, or aspiring creator who needs to hear it. Because sometimes one conversation can spark an entirely new direction. Until next time, keep creating, keep storytelling, and keep podcasting.
If you've been listening to this show, you already know the audio quality isn't an accident. Those intros and outros? Created with 11 Labs. And no, I didn't spend a fortune or waste hours in a studio to get there. 11 Labs gives you access to a massive catalog of professional-grade voices, or you can clone your own. Either way, you get broadcast-quality sound that makes your content feel legitimate from the first second. Right now, you can start a free trial and get 10,000 credits for just $11 a month. That's professional-level audio production for less than 2 cups of coffee. Click the link in the show notes and start elevating your creative process today.